The issue of asset sales has come to the forefront once again as a nationwide protest against state-owned enterprises has been planned for this weekend. Legal expert at Otago University, Dr. Jacinta Ruru, says the government needs to resolve the issue of who owns the rights to water that the companies rely on before asset sales can proceed.
Well, if the government goes ahead with the sale of water-dependent state-owned enterprises like our Mighty River, which is the one that they've indicated is first up, and Māori don't feel as though they have come to any negotiated compromise with the government before that, Māori may take a claim to the High Court, which will create a whole lot of uncertainty for New Zealanders and international investors seeking to buy shares in that asset.
Dr. Ruru says if a court finds in favour of Māori owning water, the companies may have to end up paying for the use of that water.
So there's a whole lot of ramifications in this that the government would be wise to settle with Māori before it goes ahead with the sale of our water-dependent assets.
So 9 Local News asked National Senior Government Whip Michael Woodhouse why the government is not resolving the issue of who owns the water rights that the companies involved with asset sales rely on.
Well, that's not really an issue that the government can resolve. The courts are there to determine property rights, and certainly the Waitangi Tribunal is considering whether or not Māori have an implied or explicit ownership of the water, and that's a process that should be followed.
Woodhouse says he doesn't think the issue of rights to water is integral to the issue of asset sales.
No, and to be honest, I don't even think iwi do. Certainly they've wanted an urgent determination about water in the context of the partial float of these assets, but I don't think that any determination would run sufficient interference on the offering to prevent it from going ahead in the meantime.
Woodhouse says at this stage there's no reason to stop the first public offering of Mighty River Power, and he says he thinks in the third quarter of this year that offering will go ahead. Debbie Narona.
Aotearoa Not For Sale. That's the message of protest groups going to spread throughout the country today in a series of coordinated marches against asset sales or partial asset sales. Event organiser Miriam Perad, the spokesperson for Aotearoa New Zealand is Not For Sale, is with us now. Thanks for coming in, Miriam.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Busy day for you today. What are you expecting to happen today?
Well, the really exciting thing about today is that we've got protests happening in 16 different centres across the country. So not just in the main centres, Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, but also Takaka, Rawene. It's incredible the amount of support that we've got. So in Auckland at 2 o'clock we're meeting at Britomart. We're going to have King Kapisi starting us off, which is really exciting. He's just confirmed. We're going to march up Queen Street, have a People's Hui outside the Town Hall, where we're going to put forward 3 proposals for people to vote on in some direct democracy, and then we're going to move off to the Pioneer Women's Hall for a public meeting.
You say you've got a lot of support. What sort of numbers are you expecting, let's say, at the Auckland March?
On Facebook at the moment it says about 2,300, but that's sort of similar to last time, and we had 8,000 to 10,000 turn up on the streets. But I think the main focus is the fact that it's happening all around the country, and so we've got people, like I said, in 16 different towns and centres, which is unprecedented and incredibly inspiring. Still
tiny numbers. I mean, it's still less than 1%, isn't it, for Auckland? That may be translated across the country. Do you think that it's just too late?
No, I don't think it is. I think, obviously, people are disheartened by what's happened. It's been rammed through Parliament with a very, very slim majority, and the submissions haven't really been listened to, and we haven't had that dialogue with the government, which I think is the biggest problem here. And so this is why there's so much support for the protests across New Zealand and people coming out. Yeah.
Do you think people, because I mean we voted the government in knowing this was going to happen, that this was...
I didn't vote for them.
Yeah. Well, sorry, the people of New Zealand democratically voted the government in knowing this was going to happen. And now suddenly people are saying, well, hold on, we actually didn't know this was really going to happen. It was just we sort of wanted you more than the other people. I mean, do you think people have been slightly duped?
I think it says something really sad about New Zealand political system at the moment that, 1 million people didn't come out and vote last year. So hopefully this direct democracy that we're having today is going to help inspire people to get back out on the streets and start voting for the opposition parties if they don't want National in next year. I think the really awesome thing about this is that we've got such widespread support. So it's not a fringe movement like we just had a conversation about before. It's not just the Communists, not just the Labour Party, not just the Greenies, not just Māori. It's across the board. We've got New Zealand First, we've got Grey Power, we've got all the unions. totally phenomenal.
Miriam, it seems to me that during this whole debate which we've had, because we've had a pretty upfront debate about the partial sale of assets over the last few months, that what's being lost here slightly is the government keeps on trying to sell this line that we're not selling off simply to bolster our coffers. We're doing it so we don't have to increase debt, so we can invest in other assets, our hospitals, our schools, our roads. They're all good causes, are they not? They're good things for us to invest in.
I absolutely agree. They're awesome things to invest in, but I don't think this is the right way to go about it. And economists also don't agree this is the right way to go about it. If we sell these assets off, we might make a quick buck. We balance the government's books. They're in it for another, 3.5 years? They look great, and then we don't get that revenue, that long-term revenue that these really these assets that actually bring in quite a high revenue every year bring into the country, and it's not sustainable. It's short-term, and I think it's selfish because yes, government says they've got a mandate. They've got a government mandate for 4, maybe 8 years. We've got a mandate on this for life. This is our children's future.
400, 800 years.
Yeah.
What do you hope to actually achieve today?
Well, all sorts of things. We've got demonstrations, we've got public meetings. We want to have people coming and feeling empowered by the voices of the people around them, and of course come up with some solutions about what we can do from here on out. I mean, we don't have all of the answers. Aotearoa is not for sale. We're here as an avenue for a number of different organisations and individuals to make their voice heard and come up with some real strategies to either halt asset sales, boycott Mercury Energy and Mighty River Power, commit to not buying shares and declaring Mighty River Power as an unethical investment. I think essentially we want to put the message out that to shareholders, potential shareholders, whether they be New Zealand or foreign owned, that they potentially buy these assets against the wishes of the large majority of New Zealand, and we're not going to, the large majority of the population of New Zealand, I'm sorry, and we're not going to just lie down and let this happen because these are our assets, and why should they be sold to either National Party's friends, the wealthy elite who can actually afford to invest in the stock market? I know that I can't. I don't think I know anybody who actually can afford to invest in the stock market. So yeah, we've got a lot of things.
Somewhere here you can still make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. We wouldn't be doing it if we couldn't.
All right, Miriam Perraud from Aotearoa NZ is not for sale. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much
Have a good march this afternoon.
Thank you.
This update is brought to you by ANZ, proud sponsor of the New Zealand Olympic team.
Kia ora, good evening. It's been a day of protest across the country as thousands took to the streets calling for an end to the government's asset sale plan.
The protests began at 2 this afternoon and were spread from Otago to Northland. The biggest demonstration and the most rowdy was in central Auckland with a turnout of thousands. Charlotte Whale was there.
A blatant display of defiance.
John Key, personally I don't like you.
With some heavy hitters and angry ultimatums.
If you're as much of a magic financial man as you say you are, yeah, you must have another idea. Find it.
As the crowd moved up Auckland's Queen Street, the chants got louder.
Stand up, fight back!
Legislation allowing the sale of state-owned assets scraped through Parliament by just one vote. This is the backlash.
Aotearoa Not For Sale!
They say they're here hoping to sway the government, but that looks unlikely. John Key has made it clear he was given the green light to sell assets when he was re-elected. After all, he says it was a crucial issue in his campaign.
We've actually talked to a lot of National voters who have come out in support of us and have said they're ashamed of voting National because of what's happened.
Just because people voted for National doesn't mean they voted for asset sales.
Demonstrations were held across the country. The bad weather may have deterred protesters in Wellington, but police say at least 500 turned out in Christchurch.
Stop asset sales! Stop the asset sales!
Signatures are also being gathered to force a referendum on the issue. The outcome, though, won't be binding. But protesters today giving John Key a clear message. Listen or face the consequences. Charlotte Whale, One News.
This One News update is brought to you by ANZ, proud sponsor of the New Zealand Olympic team. News update is brought to you by ANZ, proud sponsor of the New Zealand Olympic team.
A warning tonight to investors looking to buy shares in state-owned assets. Constitutional expert May Chen says there'll be issues down the track, and John Key was wrong to say he may dismiss the findings of the Waitangi Tribunal. Political reporter Jessica Much has the details.
In 2 months, shares in Mighty River Power will be up for sale. But one constitutional expert says investors should be nervous because there are still more hurdles around Māori water rights.
I think politically this is really hard, but there will have to be some accommodation of some sort. Māori feel too strongly about this.
Economist Ganesh Nana, who has been working with the Green Party, told the tribunal this process will affect the price of shares.
Uncertainty is a significant factor in market conditions, and I think the government would be remiss in not considering the level of uncertainty when it decides to sell.
The Prime Minister says investors shouldn't be worried.
I think the government's position will be upheld, which is no one owns water.
It's day 4 of the tribunal hearing. The Māori Council argues it has water rights and is trying to slow down the asset sales process. John Key says he may ignore the findings.
If we're going to spend millions of taxpayer dollars having a constitutional watchdog or forum like this where Māori can go and air their grievances, then it's important that the government doesn't predetermine the outcome.
I'm the government's major spokesperson, and I need to spell out the government's position. The government's long-held and very strongly held view is that nobody owns water.
The Māori Party is also unhappy with John Key's comments. A face-to-face meeting has been scheduled for the middle of next week to talk about the support agreement. The tribunal is set to run until at least next week. Jessica Much, One News.
This One News update is brought to you by ANZ, proud sponsor of the New Zealand Olympic team.